5 years ago, surrogacy was costing approximately $75,000 to $100,000.
Yeah.
Now, the average surrogacy journey has ballooned from anywhere from $185 to $250. I just heard today as high as $550. And the reason it's gotten so expensive, if the woman doing the heavy lifting was getting paid more because she wanted it, amen. Like, she figured out how to do it, good for her. Is that the agencies are charging more and more, and to be quite honest, sometimes delivering less and less. So how do we reduce the cost? This is one of the biggest misconceptions. People think that surrogates are going through the process because they need the money, because this is the only way that they can make $50,000 or $60,000 of compensation. What you're talking about, I think, is a core American principle, which is having a family. And I think that everyone who wants to have a family deserves to be able to have one.
Welcome to another episode of Biohack-it. And I'm very excited about my guest this afternoon, Dr. Brian Levine. I have been following your journey for about 4 years personally, and I've been, looking you up. We've exchanged messages back and forth. And so when I was doing season 2 for Biohack-it and kind of talking about my own fertility journey, I was like, I have to get you on the podcast because I love your approach. You also are one of the only guests that I'm talking to who does surrogacy. And that was really interesting to me because that's a whole other layer when it comes to fertility. So thank you for coming on to the episode and making time to see me.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this stuff today because I feel like there's so much that's not discussed well. And people talk about the surface level of fertility, but they don't ever dive deep. And I know that's what you love to do. So I'm excited to go deep today.
I'm going to give everybody a little bit more background on you so they can get familiar. So Dr. Brian is a double board certified reproductive endocrinologist and fertility and gynecology. As a founding partner and practice director of CCRM in New York City. You also have a second startup that you've just started, right? Let's hear about that too.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of this really cool, exciting startup called Nodal, which is the only online surrogacy platform that's helping to make surrogacy more affordable, more accessible, more efficient, and most importantly, more transparent.
Let's jump straight into this because I was so intrigued by that. Why is surrogacy so expensive in the US compared to other countries like Argentina or Greece and beyond?
Totally. So the number one, I'd say, hurdle or hindrance to anyone going through the surrogacy process is the sheer cost of the process. 5 years ago, surrogacy was costing approximately $75,000 to $100,000.
Yeah.
Now, the average surrogacy journey has ballooned from anywhere from $185 to $250. I just heard today as high as $550. And the reason it's gotten so expensive is, unfortunately, supply and demand economics. The supply of surrogates is very small. The demand is very large. And when you have states like New York, where we are today, that legalize surrogacy in 2021, the demands continue to increase. So unfortunately, it's literally a supply and demand economic that we're looking at. But we can also dig deep into how to make it cheaper.
And are you seeing ways that when working with, like when patients come to you, do you see a lot of patients coming to you who just don't want to carry out of choice? Or a lot of the patients you're dealing with are like, hey, we're doing this because we have a medical condition? Because some countries that we were discussing earlier, especially in Europe, you can only do surrogacy if you have a medical condition that makes you a candidate to be applied for surrogacy.
Totally. So you brought up a really important point, which is what we call social surrogacy. These are the people who walk into the office who say, do you know what? Pregnancy looks overrated. I'm okay if I don't do it. I just want a kid in the end of the day. Believe it or not, that's actually a really small part of the population.
Wow, okay.
That it seems like that's what you hear about because that's what you think with the Hollywood.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's actually a very small part of the population. In general, the people who come to me or even come to any agency looking to start their journey through surrogacy come for a number of very specific reasons. Either because they can't carry. That could be a same-sex male couple where they don't have a uterus. It could be a woman who has a medical complication or contraindication of being pregnant, such as breast or ovarian or uterine cancer. It could be a woman who has a history of, for example, like placenta accreta, where she should never be pregnant again, or a multifibroid uterus. There's a bunch of medical indications why someone shouldn't be pregnant. So can't be pregnant, shouldn't be pregnant. The next one is doesn't want to be pregnant. That's the social surrogacy side. But then there's another part of this world that we don't even talk about, which is you have a whole group of people who are looking to use surrogacy as an efficiency model. Maybe they want to be pregnant because they're starting their journey later in life, but they want to have another kid right away in short term. And we know that short interval pregnancies are actually not healthy for someone. So they're actually trying to start their family and grow their family quickly. Maybe they're in their mid 40s, for example. And so they're looking towards surrogacy to help them along that way.
And when it comes to costs being lowered, right, because you're working on this actively to make it more achievable and accessible for people, where are some of the things that you're finding that you're able to help patients with?
Totally. So in the classic model of surrogacy today, it's important to understand that the gatekeepers of surrogacy are agencies. And agencies are these brokers who help you find the surrogate, help the surrogate get their medical evaluations done, streamline the process for them to go through the clinic. They help the intended parents with their legal resources, and they ultimately help in the end, which is the transfer of care.
Is it true that in the US, a lot of the surrogates tend to be, let's say, super low income and they're just doing this to make extra money on the side? Or do you see also, and therefore their personal health might not be the best, or they might be eating a lot of saturated fats or their traditional American diet? Or are you seeing people from really healthy backgrounds kind of come forth? Because that's another big stigma I've heard in the US, right? That you're not getting really healthy carriers.
So this is one of the biggest misconceptions.
Right.
People think that surrogates are going through the process because they need the money, because this is the only way that they can make $50,000 or $60,000 of compensation. And it's a great misunderstanding. In reality, surrogates are people who like being pregnant, who want to help others. Those are teachers, those are nurses, those are medical professionals, those are members of the military, those are people with union jobs. These are individuals in America who chose to help another person through the avenue of surrogacy. Now, on our platform at Nodal, for example, we find that many of the people reaching out to us like the fact that they have autonomy and they get to pick the intended parents they get to work with. Well, automatically, that's going to automatically skew you towards a certain type of population.
Right.
But the old story of this is someone who just needs to make a quick buck and they're choosing to be pregnant is completely wrong. In fact, some of our favorite surrogates are nurses. Some of our favorite surrogates are dietitians or teachers or people who understand what it means to be pregnant and can help another family or individual along the way.
And then, Dr. Brian, talking about costs, right? Why is there such a big gap between a $100,000 surrogate to what you just heard recently about a $500,000? Like, who sets that price range?
So I'd be completely okay with the prices going through the roof if the surrogates were demanding more compensation.
Right.
If the woman doing the heavy lifting was getting paid more because she wanted it, amen. Like, she figured out how to do it, good for her. But unfortunately, what we're seeing in the current ecosystem is that the agencies are charging more and more, and to be quite honest, sometimes delivering less and less. Because of this supply and demand economics, they almost create this ecosystem where people feel like there is this pressure to select, this pressure to proceed. So people are giving wait lists, a deposit of $50,000 or $80,000 on a wait list to get on it. But in reality, the services haven't gotten any better for surrogates over the years. The cost has just gone up because more people are calling for it.
Right.
So how do we reduce the cost? Well, you reduce the cost by taking an approach such as ours at Nodal, which is saying that from a comprehensive view, let's make sure we're doing everything the right way. Legal is done the right way, evaluations are done the right way, medical clearance is done the right way, and the clinics are engaged early in the process. If you do that, you can actually have a lower cost, but still a high touch experience. And you don't have to be greedy. And furthermore, with Nodal, one of the cool things that we do is we're in network with the insurance companies.
Oh, amazing.
So we're actually working now with, the Progenies of the world, which is the fertility insurance companies for employers. So Progeny and Maven and Carrot and Arc Fertility, because we don't want surrogacy to be unattainable for individuals. We want to remove that barrier of cost and make it more efficient.
You know me, I'm always on the hunt for ways to level up my health game. And let me tell you, I've learned that when it comes to overall wellness, all roads lead to the gut. 70% of the human immune system resides in the gut, making it a crucial factor in overall health. That's why I'm thrilled to introduce to you our newest partner, Jonah, the most advanced microbiome company on the market. If you're like me, always looking at ways to optimize your health and well-being, you're going to love this product. Jonah isn't just another health app. It's a cutting-edge AI platform that analyzes your microbiome to unlock your body's full potential. Imagine having a personal health detective that dives deep into your gut to uncover the root cause of your symptoms. That's Jonah for you. They use state-of-the-art technology to get a comprehensive picture of your gut health. This isn't science fiction. It's a personalized model of your biology that helps predict how different factors affect your health. Personalized nutrition recommendations. Based on your unique microbiome profile, Jonah provides tailored dietary advice to optimize your health and enhance longevity. Whether you're aiming to boost your energy, improve your digestion, or simply feel your absolute best, Jonah is your new secret weapon. It's like having a team of microbiome scientists in your pocket working 24/7 to help you achieve your health goals. Ready to experience the precision of wellness? Visit Jonah, Jona.health today and start your journey towards optimal health. And in the US, is it true? Do you have access to the surrogate? Let's say you want to put her on a special meal plan or you want to send her food. What about supplementation? Does the intended parents have access to communicate like that with the surrogate, or is it always done through the agency?
So what you're hitting at here is what's called the relationship. And the relationship between intended parents and surrogates is very special. And it's also about disclosures up front. Not every intended parent wants to have this unfettered access with their surrogate, and vice versa. Not every surrogate wants unfettered access to the intended parents. So that's important to discuss early on with the agency and with the lawyers to make sure that everything is done in a contractual fashion. With that said, I have seen so many amazing stories where intended parents are saying, you know what, let's make sure that we can send you the supplements that make you and me feel good. Let's make sure that we can have a meal together, once a week over FaceTime. Like, I've seen so many cool things happening right now in the surrogacy space where intended parents' worst fears go away and they realize that there's this person who's connected to a family who's completely dedicated to helping someone start, grow, or complete their family. It's truly beautiful.
I mean, I think it's such a beautiful and unique experience because you're helping another couple become a family. And so you, in my opinion, I would want to be connected to the person. They're carrying my child. I want them to feel supported, and I would want to see what's best that I can help them along the way. But I guess it is everyone's an individual, and everybody has a different approach to it.
It's interesting. A lot of people don't realize that to become a surrogate in the United States, you have to be a mom by definition.
Yeah.
So you must have had a successful full-term delivery, and in fact, that child should be living in your home, and you should have a safe and healthy home. And there's a lot of diligence that's done too. Social workers and psychologists and medical evaluations and things like that. But the place where intended parents really feel safe is when they understand that there's engagement between both the intended parent and the surrogate. For example, you will never catch me saying that someone uses a surrogate because no one's using this individual. They're working with this individual. They're partnered with this individual. It's part of a continuum of care where everyone is just as important in the journey. And it's interesting, we didn't bring up before, but one of the main reasons people use the concept of I think I need a surrogate, and it just rolls off their tongue, is because they don't think they can get pregnant. And then you hear these crazy stories of someone who, ends up working with a surrogate and then they get pregnant right away. But infertility itself is a reason that people proceed with the concept of surrogacy.
That's why it came up personally for me, is because I've had a lot of ovarian issues growing up. I got recently diagnosed with having large fibroids in my uterus. And the person I spoke to in the US, I haven't fully gone through it, but they were like, listen, you might have, given the age, everything, you might have an issue with miscarriage. And so for me, I entertained the whole surrogacy thing because I know I've had health issues. And, given that I'm just going through a round of creating embryos, I don't want to put the future baby at risk.
Of course.
And it's not like, oh, I'm just going to choose to do this because I'm being lazy. It's because I think it's best for my family, right? And personally for me, I'd want to be really involved with the person and support them because I think they're doing me such a big, almost like a favor, because even though they're getting compensation, they're allowing me to have a family.
So,
and that's a very respectful, it's
I love that.
admirable, right? This woman's going out of her way to give me a family unit.
I love that. And I think that, again, you're hitting at what really drives me every day to help improve the process, which is you're taking a risk-reducing step and you're doing the most parental thing possible, which is how do I protect my unborn child?
Yeah.
Because today you feel like you can't trust your own body. So maybe you work with someone who feels trusted, someone who is evaluated, who is vetted. Because in the end of the day, what you're talking about, I think, is a core American principle, which is having a family. And I think that everyone who wants to have a family deserves to be able to have one.
Do you also see cases, Dr. Brian, where let's say a family is like, hey, I'd like this, because breast milk is amazing. Is there cases that you've seen that the surrogate continues to maybe send over, breast milk or pumps it for them and, they're able to pick it up and stuff? Or is that kind of the delivery's done and the baby's handed over and we're kind of done with the process?
So this is totally a normal question.
Okay.
People ask this all the time. And so what I always point people to is talk to your agency and talk to your lawyer, because this is something you can partner with your surrogate. But like anything in healthcare, it's all about expectation management. And look, before I was a fertility doctor, I was an obstetrician, right? I delivered over 900 kids.
Oh.
Not every single patient could end up breastfeeding like the way they imagined their story ending up. Well, the same thing can happen to a surrogate, where she might not be able to produce milk. Now, there are amazing milk banks that are out there.
Yeah.
There are amazing services that are out there. There's this company called Share the Drop, which is amazing for helping people get access to breast milk. So even if your surrogate is unwilling or unable to produce breast milk, that doesn't mean that your baby won't get breast milk in the end.
And do you see a lot of C-section births when it comes to surrogates, or it doesn't really matter, or it's more natural, or it's based on that woman's body and what is safe for the baby?
So you're absolutely correct. It's about patient safety here.
Okay.
I don't think that a person going through surrogacy is going to tell their obstetrician, no C-section, no way.
Right.
No matter if you're the intended parent or the gestational carrier. What they're probably going to say to their doctor is what I would want to hear as a doctor, which is, help me get through this safely. And if it results in a C-section, so be it. Now, I will say that the American Society for Reproductive Medicine has a bunch of recommendations over what makes it a safe surrogate and what makes a safe environment for another surrogacy journey. And if you've had 2 cesarean sections in the past, that's pretty much the cutoff for
Right.
going through surrogacy
Yeah.
again. And the reason is that 3 C-sections in the past puts you at a very high risk for having what's called uterine rupture, which can be a catastrophic emergency.
Right.
So to limit that risk, we kind of have this line in the sand, which says that if you've had 2 prior C-sections, that's it.
I wanted to also talk about some of the things you see in your practice from a fertility aspect.
Sure.
So what is what is the youngest age a patient has come to you? And what is kind of maybe surprised you about the outcome of that? And what is the oldest somebody's come to you?
So when talking about the ends of the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
the young and the old, typically they're very different stories. So for the very young patients who come to us, there's pretty much 3 reasons they do so. The very young, we're talking the late teenagers, the 18-year-olds, things like that. Those are the women who either carry a genetic diagnosis where they've learned that they have something like Turner syndrome or Fragile X syndrome, where they're going to lose their fertility at a very young age. And a very astute pediatrician or adolescent physician has guided them to say, you need to go protect and preserve your fertility and freeze your eggs before you don't have any.
And how do you get diagnosed with something like that?
Either by physical exam or family history
Okay.
or blood work or whatnot. So those are kind of the young ones. We also see the 18-year-olds who have the unfortunate diagnosis of cancer. Before they start chemotherapy, they actually now have the ability to protect and preserve their fertility through egg freezing. The other end of the spectrum. So I've had the 47-year-old who got pregnant via IVF.
First time baby?
So that's a very important point. It was not a first-time baby.
Okay.
So the 47-year-old who gets pregnant with her own eggs is very different than the 47-year-old who's never been pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a tried and true proven history of having successful pregnancies in the past, that's the best predictor that you have a shot at 47.
Right.
But in general, most fertility clinics, including my own, say that by the age of 46, we do recommend that you consider doing oocyte donation because the chances of success are very low. And if you're open to oocyte donation, then in the state of New York, up to the age of 54 is possible.
And what is the cutoff age for when you tell patients, hey, you can carry to this point, and beyond that, we don't recommend carrying?
So I believe in following practice guidelines and recommendations, right? I'm a geek and I love data. By the way, that's why I love your podcast, because Biohack-it is all about data and diving deep. But for me, I just follow the recommendations. And so the recommendations are that when someone hits 54, they should no longer be carrying a pregnancy.
Wow, that's a pretty late cutoff. I didn't think that 54 would be and do you see a lot of people doing that in your practice, and it's safe and it's being effective? How many people have you personally worked with?
So that's, it's very rare that we hit that 54 number. Someone might be 49, 50, 51, 52. It's pretty rare that we get to the 54. But it's important that you do have a number for patients, right? You need to offer them clarity. You want to be transparent as much as you can. And what happens is that as a woman gets older, the risks to herself keep increasing.
Right.
So there comes a point where, for example, once you turn 35, we all know that your risk of having a chromosomal abnormality or birth defect increases statistically. That's just population numbers.
Right.
But what people don't talk about is that when you start crossing the 43, 44, 45-year-old range, actually now there's risks to maternal health.
Yep.
Those could be things like pregnancy-induced hypertension or gestational hypertension or preeclampsia or gestational diabetes. Now, of course, all these different scenarios can affect a child's health, but they also can affect maternal health. So it's both for maternal and fetal benefit that we have these lines in the sand.
So I recently read a study somewhere that the true line of aging, like they're seeing medically, there's a huge decline in our health at 44. That's when we drastically start aging, and 60 or 66. Like now it's like tracked that is the age. It's like where you see a true decline. So they tend to recommend, like, there's a lot of shifts that happen at that age. And this is correlated over, collecting a lot of data, research, and different markers across the board. So what you're saying kind of makes sense, because that's when kind of it starts getting into murky, unsafe water. I personally would think if you're at that age and you've never had a kid previously, there is so much high risk involved that you might want to look at options like surrogacy kind of off the bat to set yourself up for success.
And totally. So when I meet a patient for the first time, and it happens, right? Life gets busy. We had a pandemic in between.
Yeah.
Things all changed. But for example, when I see a 44-year-old who says, I'm thinking about starting a family, it's on the table. Because I think patients really appreciate transparency and honesty from their doctor. And the one thing you don't ever want as a patient is to be surprised. And so if you talk about it early in the journey, and you talk about it early with the patient, then they can sort of get comfortable with it. Or they can be very vocal and say, this is not for me. And if that's what you're going to recommend, that's not what I want to do.
And then they have to work with a provider that aligns with them.
Correct.
Or you reevaluate if this can be fixed.
Or you just help guide them.
Yeah.
Right? So I like to make what's called data-derived decisions. And so I always tell patients, look, I'm not going to make a plan for you until I figure out who you are. So let's figure out what's going on, and then we can figure out what you need.
And then take it from there. Because
exactly.
I was speaking about this morning. I think this is such a personal and individual journey for a couple, or if you're doing this on your own even, you really need to connect with your practitioner, and you have to share a bond with them and feel like they're on your team and they understand you, because you have 9, 10, 11, maybe longer with somebody, right? So you really need to make sure that you're aligned and you feel connected to that person that you're working with. This episode is brought to you by Timeline Nutrition. Are you ready to unlock the secret to boundless energy and vibrant health, no matter your age? Imagine your body as a bustling city with trillions of tiny power plants, your mitochondria working tirelessly to keep you alive and thriving. But here's the catch. These cellular powerhouses are under constant attack from modern life's invisible enemies, toxins, processed food, and polluted air. As we age, our once effective cellular recycling system starts to slow down, leaving us feeling drained. Enter MitoPure, your cellular fountain of youth. This isn't just another supplement. It's a scientifically backed revolution in a bottle. MitoPure doesn't just mask symptoms, it dives deep into your cells, clearing out the cellular clutter and making room for vibrant, energetic newcomers. Imagine recapturing that youthful spark, the boundless energy, the quick recovery, the mental clarity. That's the MitoPure promise. It's not just about adding years to your life, but life to your years. Don't let another day pass feeling less than your best. Rejuvenate your cells, reclaim your vitality, and age with MitoPure. Visit timeline.com/biohack-it now and use my exclusive code Biohack-it. Your future self will thank you.
Totally. And so, this is what I love about working at CCRM every day. So for us at CCRM, one of the things we do is we have what's called a one-day workup, where we've standardized the evaluation of the patient on day one. So at CCRM, for someone to go from hello to go, right? From hello, let's meet you, to go, let's treat you, there's a lot of steps in between. And by having a standardized algorithmic approach, we can make sure that we're kind of crossing the T's and dotting the I's so that we fully understand who our patient is, but more importantly is we understand what they need. to get to the next step.
And normally, what is the time frame from hello to go? Like on average, what are you seeing with
It's
people?
usually about a month.
Okay.
And anyone who goes to a fertility doctor and the doctor's willing to treat them at hello, I would say run. Because there are fertility clinics almost next to every Starbucks at this point, right? Like they feel like they're ubiquitous throughout America.
Yeah.
There is no reason that 1 month matters. But I can tell you that 1 month of missed opportunity for workup can lead to months of bad treatment.
Absolutely.
And I see it happen every day.
There was something that we spoke about before we started recording, which was the worst diagnosis a woman can receive is bad luck. It's that unexplained infertility. And you do a really good job explaining that.
Right.
So I'd love to get a little bit into that because I think so many people get this undiagnosed infertility and they're like, well, what do I do from here? Like, where am I even supposed to go?
So I think that in the end of the day, when I look back at my career, hopefully 40 years from now, I'm going to be the proudest of not using the diagnosis of unexplained. Unexplained infertility is an incredibly convenient diagnosis to use. The Society for Assisted Reproductive Technology, or SART, actually uses it as a term that allows us to classify certain IVF cycles. So it's a governmental term that's used, even reporting to the CDC. But imagine this. You go to the doctor, you don't feel well. The doctor tells you you have cancer. The answer is you need chemotherapy. How would you be okay if the doctor just said you have cancer, you need chemo? You would say, what kind of cancer do I have? What is the stage? What is the prognosis?
Absolutely.
But all of a sudden when it comes to fertility, people say you have unexplained. They're like, okay, I'll do IVF, without even knowing what their infertility problem is. Is it male? Is it female? Is it combined? So in fact, I frequently tell patients and my friends that unexplained infertility is the laziest diagnosis. Not that the patient's lazy, that the doctor and the treatment team were lazy enough to not figure out the root cause of what's going on. Are you not getting pregnant because you have an implantation issue? Are you not getting pregnant because you have an egg quality issue? Are you not getting pregnant because maybe the sperm has a DNA fragmentation issue? No one has ever been hurt by diving deep and going slow. People are frequently hurt both financially and physically by going too fast. So what I always tell people is, when it comes to unexplained infertility, it is my job to never give you that diagnosis. I don't want to sit across from the table from you and tell you I don't know why, it's just bad luck. And instead, I'd rather give you an answer for why things aren't working and give you the data of how I came up with that decision, but more importantly is give you the next step of how to get where you need to go.
That's such a beautiful way to hear somebody like you say that, because a lot of people just walk away and because they're just turn mills a lot of fertility clinics. That's the experience I'm having, which is why I was so excited to research you and bring you on, because I wanted to inspire our audience to really do their research and connect with practitioners who care. They're not just a number who's walking into this mass clinic that they have 100 people a day and then you're kind of walking out. And I think a lot of people walk away something disappointed by how they're kind of being treated in the process. And so somebody who takes such a personal approach to hearing you, hearing your history, understanding what's going on with your unique biology, I think it's really important. And people want that hands-on experience, especially during a time that's very expensive. It's a huge investment and it's an emotional commitment, right? You're going to go through it up and down and the uncertainty of it all. So it's a journey.
So you hit the nail on the head, which is that there's 3 intrinsic costs to going through fertility treatment. There's the financial cost. This stuff ain't cheap, right? The drug companies, they have not been able to bring down the cost of the drugs. The manufacturers of the materials, because they're all disposable, have not been able to bring down the cost of the supplies. There are companies who are focusing on bringing down the cost of the procedures of IVF in the laboratory, but in general, they're very expensive. So it's financially expensive. It's physically expensive. You spend 2 weeks shooting yourself up with drugs, seeing your doctor when you're bottomless, in your most vulnerable state possible, hopped up on hormones in what feels like a rush sometimes, in probably not your favorite mood or mode. And all of a sudden now you're going through what could be the most challenging medical condition you've ever had in your life. So it's physically challenging. And then it's emotionally challenging. You come into the doctor's office with a very simple request. I want a baby. You feel like everyone else is able to achieve this and you can't, right? Most people don't realize that 1 in 6 suffer from infertility worldwide. But you feel like it's been taken from you. And you feel like it's something that you should have right away because you've done everything else right. How can you not do this one thing right? So the emotional toll of this process, I would say sometimes is a greater cost than the physical or financial.
I think that's really important. Do you also make, because especially as women, right? If we can't get pregnant, a lot of women feel like lesser than, like we're not good enough. Why is my body not able to make a baby? And so I think patients getting emotionally and mentally ready, there's going to be a journey, and maybe it works out the way where you might have to tweak a few things. Maybe you work with a donor egg. Maybe there's other options there for you. But approaching it from that mindset, do you see that a lot with patients? Do you pair them up with sometimes some sort of a coach, or a psychiatrist or a therapist of some sort to help them along the way?
Totally. So what you're hinting at is that it takes a village, right? And a lot of people don't even talk to their own mothers about their own mother's struggle with infertility. Most people don't realize that 1/3 of all pregnancies worldwide end in miscarriage. Go home. Ask your mom.
Yeah.
Did you have a miscarriage? You might be shocked because you probably never talked about it, but it's much more normal than ever. Yet sometimes women internalize a miscarriage as something they did wrong, not realizing that A, it's normal, it's healthy to have miscarriages, it's part of the continuum of life, and it's common. Also, frequently, people come to the fertility doctor saying, I want a baby. How are we going to make a baby? But they don't bring the other half the ingredient with them, which is their male partner.
Yep.
And most of the time, people are unaware that it can be 1/3 due to female problems and 1/3 due to male problems and 1/3 combined. Now, the silver lining of the pandemic is that people got comfortable with telehealth. So if I have a patient who comes in and it's a single, it's a woman who's in a couple, but she comes by herself, I will say to her, let's do our follow-up over Zoom. She'll say, no, I like in-person appointments. I'm like, but how do we get your husband here?
Yep.
How do we bring your partner here? How do we bring whoever your sperm source is here? Because it takes two to tango, and to bake this cake, we need to talk about all the ingredients together.
Do you see when it comes to male infertility, because I read a study somewhere that's also like 50% of infertile couples recently, the male had a lot of load of glyphosate and microplastics in their systems.
So, I laugh and smirk a little bit because this microplastics thing it's very interesting and also very scary.
Yeah.
We're learning now that there are a lot of different elements in the environment that are augmenting the male hormonal patterns. It's augmenting how men process their own hormones and ultimately how they produce testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
And sperm is a byproduct of testosterone production. Or said otherwise, testosterone is a byproduct of sperm production. Depends on how you look at it. I'm a fertility doctor, so I always think testosterone is because of sperm. But regardless, what we're learning is that there's a lot of things that men do they don't realize that can negatively impact their sperm function. And that's why it's really important that there are companies out there, for example, like Posterity Health, where you can now do a telehealth appointment with a reproductive urologist. People don't even realize that there are doctors who specialize in just male fertility. And you can do it from the comfort of your own home. And you can use a company like Legacy and go give a sperm sample at home and mail it in to get your semen analysis. Because knowledge is power. And I think if men can start to understand what their sperm parameters are, then they can make changes in their lifestyle that hopefully will improve it. But to answer your question about the microplastics, so there's a recent study that showed that 100% of the testicles that were looked at time of autopsy had microplastics within it. But what that study didn't tell you was that what percent of those men actually had children? And is this data interesting or relevant? And today it's interesting. And I don't know how relevant the microplastic story is right now, but it's definitely enough to make me stay up at night and think a little bit more about it.
And do you feel that with other environmental toxins as well, herbicides, pesticides, maybe the levels of alcohol that men are consuming, is that all impacting their sperm quality?
It has to.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that anytime you challenge the body knows that it needs to first fight that challenge and then focus on reproducing. If you're running from a lion or you're in the fight or flight mode, your body's going to tune down the production of sperm or eggs or allow you for implantation or not because it's focused on self-preservation. An interesting study just came out of the Lancet, the British Medical Journal. And in the Lancet, they beautifully demonstrated that any amount of alcohol is actually detrimental. And there is no cardioprotection that occurs even from mild to moderate amounts of alcohol, which is, by the way, counter to everything we've been told our whole life, right? We've been told red wine is the thing and have 1 to 3 glasses a week and it's good for your heart, it's good for your soul, things like that. Now, I'm not telling everyone to stop drinking alcohol, but I think what we're talking about here is that life needs to be in moderation. If you take one step further and you take a look at Europe and take a look at parts of Asia where they have these things called blue zones, where people are living much longer, healthier lives, what are they doing? They're eating less, they're eating a balanced meal, They're typically adhering to the Mediterranean diet, and they're avoiding all the things you just asked me about.
Yeah.
The plastics, their herbicides, they're eating organically, they're eating from their own gardens, they're not eating a lot of meat, they're not eating a lot of processed foods,
Right.
they're not eating a lot of sugar, they're also not taking Ozempic, they're also not taking lots of pills and supplements, they're just eating and living and walking.
And they have community. I think we really underestimate loneliness and how isolated we can feel sometimes on this journey. And I think, like you said earlier, it takes a village. So making yourself surrounded by the right people as you go through a fertility journey, I think is really important as well.
Amen, right? I think that anyone who has to walk this journey alone is tough. And by the way, in my own practice, this is why I give every patient my email address, right? I don't hide things from people. My social media is public. I let people see that I have 2 cute daughters at home. I let people also understand that my wife and I had 4 pregnancies, but only 2 kids that resulted from it, because miscarriages are common and
it
it's
happens.
okay to not always win. But more importantly is access to your doctor is critical. Because if you ever feel like you're just being prescribed and you feel like you're being put through a ringer, it feels awful when things don't go right. Maybe when they work out, it's okay and you can kind of brush it off. But imagine how much better the experience could be if you knew why you're going through it, what your doctor's doing for you, what the team behind that doctor is actually thinking about every day, and how you can help improve your process, either from mental health or from stress mitigation, or just getting yourself into a better place to win the game.
So with my husband, when we decided this summer that we're going to go through this fertility journey together, I said, if I'm going to go through it, you're going to go through it with me. So one of the things that we brought in, talking about going back to the male sperm health and all, he started the diet with me. So eating, completely Mediterranean diet at home, making sure everything's organic, grass-fed, really taking care of that ourselves. Sleeping, he drinks, so he completely cut out alcohol and stuff. Because I said, listen, I think it's a group effort. It's also bonds you as a couple.
Totally.
So he did his testing, I'm doing my testing, and then we're kind of collaborating along the way, because I think it feels very burdensome when the woman feels like it's all her responsibility. She's on her own. She's taking this journey. And I said, listen, we can only hope for the best outcome, but I think we both need to show up to the table and put our best foot forward. And I think we both need to work on this. And taking out hormone disruptors, which is also going to bring out, personal care products, what's in our home, what are the cleaning products we're using, making sure, like, from his perspective, is he getting in enough sleep? Is he hydrating enough? So where do you see that kind of also playing a part when it comes to your male patients? This episode is brought to you by Biooptimizers. Are you tired of tossing and turning at night, unable to quiet your racing mind? 4 out of 5 Americans aren't getting enough magnesium, and it's affecting their sleep and overall well-being. I used to lie awake for hours worrying about my to-do list for the next day. It was a vicious cycle that left me exhausted and unproductive. That all changed when I discovered Magnesium Breakthrough. Since adding it to my nightly routine, I've been falling asleep much faster, staying asleep much longer, and waking up refreshed. It's been a game changer for my sleep quality and energy levels. What sets Magnesium Breakthrough apart is its unique blend of all 7 forms of magnesium. Unlike other supplements that offer just 1 or 2 types, this comprehensive formula supports everything from stress management to muscle recovery. Experience the power of optimal magnesium levels for yourself. Go to biooptimizers.com/biohack-it and use promo code biohack-it to save 10% on your first order. Subscribe for even bigger discounts and free gifts, ensuring your monthly supply is always guaranteed. Don't let sleepless nights hold you back. Try Magnesium Breakthrough today.
So I think what you're talking about is partnership. And right, part of it is partnering with your partner, making sure that there's alignment between the two. Because, for example, if a woman has a very low egg count, we may not get a lot of eggs at time of retrieval. Don't you want to make sure you have the best sperm for those very few eggs that are there? So of course it's about partnership. Furthermore, I'm a Whoop addict, so I wear this Whoop all day long. And most important thing for me is I use my Whoop to monitor my sleep. Many men are unaware of how bad their sleep quality is. And so I use it as collecting my own personal derived data to improve my sleep every day. Is it cutting out sugar in my diet? Is it eating dinner and then waiting 3 hours to go to sleep? Is it getting into a sleep routine and talking about sleep hygiene and things like that? And I really try to focus on improving my sleep. And I show this data to my patients. And I show them, for example, that I love sushi. but I have an allergy to nori, which I only learned from actually following my own data. I cut out alcohol at one point. I'd cut out a whole bunch of things from my diet, and I still was not sleeping well until I finally cut out nori from my sushi, and I slept fine. There's no test on earth that would have ever told me that I have an allergy to it.
That's more of like doing your own testing.
Right. And I still love eating sushi, but I learned from following my own personal data that I have a sensitivity to it that disrupts my sleep. So if I know that I have a big week ahead of me or something like that, I actually avoid sushi. And so what I tell people is learn your data. Own your own data, because no one's going to watch your data as closely as you do.
Talking about data, I wanted to go into something in regards to supplements, because there's so much noise on the market about take this, take that. Do you give your patients some sort of a supplement protocol, like as they prep for fertility? And also, do you give them like a detox? So from when the hello stage happens and somebody decides to work with you, do you tell them to do a certain diet, detox, supplement protocol for 90 days, a month, or do you just kind of jump straight into it?
So it's, again, about partnership. When you get that high-pressure finance female who comes in, who's like, look, I got 45 minutes. Let's get this done. You tell me what I need to do, and I'll do it because I'm a checklist person. Mm-hmm. She doesn't want to hear about your diet and your acupuncture and meditation and things like that. But when you get the patient who sits there who's cried through your tissue box, who's like, doc, I have one shot. We can afford one time. Yeah, we talk about the 90-day plan. We talk about optimization. I mean, if anyone's receptive to it, of course I'll talk about it. But I always tell people it starts very simply. My favorite vitamin is called CoQ10. You don't have to go buy an expensive version of it. You can go buy it at your local vitamin store. But there's really good data that CoQ10 actually helps improve both your cardiovascular risk for men and women and also for your fertility. It's a potent anti-inflammatory agent. Second, I tell people to avoid the 4 W's: white sugar, white rice, white wheat, and then the last W is skim dairy products. So go to whole milk. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that skim dairy has a lot of sugar in it. So if you can avoid sugar with those 4 different individual ones, white sugar, white rice, white wheat, skim dairy, and avoid those 4, you can make a dramatic improvement in your diet without making dramatic changes to your diet. Right? People don't do well with major changes. They do well with mild changes. But let's say someone's like, you know what, doc, that's cute, but I like pills. I want to take something. I want to feel like I'm doing something. Well, there's lots of great supplement companies that are out there. There's a company that actually I sit on their advisory board that I like a lot called Parallel. And Parallel actually has sachets of vitamins. So it's one of the few supplement companies out there that don't try to jam everything into one tablet, and they actually give you the amount that you need, derived by OBGYNs and fertility doctors like me, who've come together to figure out what do you need to take to go through your process to either prep your body appropriately. But in the end of the day, think about what your grandmother did. Think about what your mother did, and try to emulate that. Be healthy, don't smoke, don't drink, and understand that it's not all in your control, but you have a bunch of people behind you who are going to help you succeed.
So exactly about what you just said right now about listening to people and then, setting myself up for success. I personally am reverse engineering my journey. I started to do an environmental detox and cellular detox about a few months ago before I even decide to go through my first round of IVF to make sure I'm getting my body fully prepped. We're doing this 90-day cleanse now with the diet and the supplements and stuff. Because I said to my husband, I was like, because I can't commit to multiple rounds because I think it's going to be emotionally too much for me. Let's just go into this prepared as a team and let me get my body ready because I don't think, I didn't expect this to happen. So I'm going to do all the back end work. But at the same time, having said that, I want to make sure that I'm giving it my best
Sure.
shot. But I think a lot of women just kind of rush into it because they're like, oh, you're 41. When I called the first doctor, they said, you're 41. You should come in next month. I said, I'm not ready to come in next month. Like, I know my body isn't there. So it's interesting to hear you talk about some of these supplements and stuff because I'm actually taking some of them and doing like kind of the prep work prior to get myself ready because I don't want to waste that shot.
So I think what you're talking about is what I call the marathon of fertility. Mm-hmm. Fertility is not a sprint. It's a marathon. Nobody runs a marathon without training. No one runs a marathon thinking it's going to be easy. And no one runs a marathon thinking that this is going to be the worst experience of my life. Right? You kind of go into it hoping to finish and do well and have maybe a personal best or a good time or something like that. But you train and you prepare and you mentally prepare and you physically prepare. And fertility is the exact same thing. So I love your program that you've put yourself on, and I wish more patients would do it. But what you're talking about is also a luxury. And
Absolutely.
a luxury is only for a certain segment of the population. If we open the aperture and we think about 1 in 6 suffer from infertility, we haven't even touched upon the fact that in the LGBTQ plus community, people don't know their fertility, right? In the heterosexual couples, at least you try at home, and if it's not succeeding, then you seek help. In the LGBTQ plus community, frequently people go to the doctor just assuming they're fine, assuming that all they need is access to eggs or sperm and they'll be okay. And then they're devastated to learn that actually they have endometriosis, painful periods. Maybe they're not having sex where they're having pain from it, but they didn't even know they had the signs of endometriosis. Or maybe a male is finding out that he has poor sperm quality and he had no idea. Or maybe, for example, a gay male is on PrEP, for example, to limit his HIV risk, but in turn his testosterone levels have gone down, and some doctors given him testosterone supplementation, which is actually contraceptive in men. And now he learns he has to stop his testosterone because it's contraceptive.
It's crazy to hear that there's so many variables to actually end up having a family, to starting a family.
It's a
There's
miracle.
so many things that happen, and I think that's why having people like yourself who truly care about their patients, their journey, they're invested in that with them, and they take time to get to hear you, meet your needs, and then build you a plan that's going to work for you. I wanted to go into one more thing, kind of coming towards kind of the end of the episode that was really fascinating to me, is I recently heard that when it comes to egg donors, the price can again vary from $50,000 up to $250,000.
Yeah, so this kills me. So the American Society for Reproductive Medicine is very clear about what they recommend the compensation should be to a potential egg donor. And it should be between $8,000 and $10,000 of compensation. So it starts to make you wonder, where is that money going?
Right.
And it's because the agencies are marketing towards intended parents for a unicorn. The Harvard MBA who might be a certain ethnicity or race or identify a certain way, and someone wants that. And so they're billing for that. But in reality, you want to know that your egg donor is a nice person. You want to know that your egg donor has the same values as you. And most importantly, is you want your egg donor to know that her eggs work. So what I always tell people is that there's a great alternative to egg donation in this country that actually makes it more affordable, more accessible. And that's called previously frozen eggs or frozen egg donors. And there are banks across America where these donors have already donated their eggs. By the way, if someone opts to go through a frozen egg donor, you could go rather quickly and in a matter of weeks have the embryos made in the IVF lab that's close to you. As opposed to for a fresh egg donor, they have to evaluate that donor, they have to cycle that donor, put it through IVF, and there could be a huge delay. So I tell people, because I'm so laser focused on affordability and accessibility, frozen eggs are a really good alternative for people if you want to keep moving down the road and if you're trying to contain costs and constrain costs.
Somebody's listening to this episode and they're like, I'm fascinated by this. I want to start my fertility journey. I love Dr. Brian's approach. What are like the 3 tips that you would give them in starting their journey? Like, where is the starting point if somebody's like, I don't even know where to, like, you know, there's so many different things to look at.
So the first step is take a deep breath. Because going through fertility treatments can make you feel really sick. And you're not. You're trying to just get something or achieve something that feels very natural.
Right.
But you can feel very sick very quickly because you're getting your blood drawn, you're taking these medications or whatnot. So I always tell people, take a deep breath and realize it's a marathon, not a sprint. Second, ask yourself the toughest question on earth. What does your ideal family look like? Are you happy with just 1? Do you want 3? Do you have an idea of a balanced family of certain genders? Do you have a certain idea of age gaps in between? Is there a plan or a story book, or a tale in your head that you've always told yourself? Be honest with yourself. And third, get evaluated. Just get checked out. You can do a ton with data, but you also do a lot of damage with fear. And it's very easy to have this really scary narrative start building in your head that you're never going to have children and it's going to be impossible and there's no way this is going to happen. And it can really feel real. And then you start going on the internet and you can feel scared out of your mind. So I tell people is, take a deep breath, know that it's a marathon, figure out what your ideal family is, and most importantly, go get your data. Know your data.
I'm so grateful I got to meet you in person because I've been so inspired by your work and following you for 4 years and seeing the educational content you put out and the success stories. I mean, I've had friends who've come to your clinic. And so to have the opportunity to sit down, get to know you a little bit better, know that you're working on an incredible second startup, that it's all about making surrogacy accessible to families, is just so nice because you're really advocating for patients. And I think the surrogacy world, the fertility world needs more doctors like you. So thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and just helping me educate my audience on what are options for them. Because it all starts with options and education.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for diving deep today, because I think that my goal, at least, for people is to understand that A, don't get isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel alone. Fertility takes a village. A baby takes a lot of people to raise it, and a kid takes a lot of people to help it along the way. And you can start your journey with a lot of people. And I'm not the only fertility doctor out there. There's lots of great doctors out there. But just get your data, because once you know your numbers, you can do anything. And so thank you for diving deep today, and this was so much fun.
Thank you for your time again, Dr. Brian. Thank you.
Thank you.